They pushed you, didn't they? They provoked you, pushed you to your breaking point. They thought they could control you, make you bend to their will. But what they didn't realize is that they were awakening something far darker than they could ever imagine. You weren't born to be a monster. But sometimes, life has a way of bringing out parts of us we never thought we had. The constant taunts, the lies, the betrayal. They awakened something inside you, something that was always lurking, waiting for the right moment to rise. And now, that monster is awake. It's hungry. It's angry. And once it's unleashed, nothing will be the same. The monster they thought was only a whisper inside you is now a roaring beast. They think they can control the damage, but they won't be ready for what happens next. What they've awakened will devour them, and they will realize, far too late, that they've bitten off more than they can chew. They mocked you, didn't they? Called you weak, dismissed you like you were nothing. They thought you were just a stepping stone, an obstacle to step over. Every sneer, every lie, every betrayal, it wasn't just cruelty, it was fuel. Each one of their actions fed the fire inside you, stoking a blaze they never saw coming. What they didn't realize is that they were pushing you closer and closer to something they couldn't control. At first, it was just a whisper, a simmering anger you barely noticed. You could ignore it, push it aside, but it never really went away. It lingered, a quiet hum beneath your skin, building, swelling. You tried to bury it, but the more they pushed, the louder it became. One day, you felt it. It was no longer a whisper. It was a roar, a surge of power rushing through your veins, impossible to ignore. You could feel it inside you, stretching, waking up. And that's when you realized the monster wasn't just something inside you. It was you. The anger, the power. It was no longer something you controlled. It was something that controlled you. With every blow, you became stronger. With every word, every manipulation, every injustice, the monster inside you grew, fed by their mistakes. You weren't just angry anymore. No, now you were something else, something dangerous. You didn't just want revenge. You wanted more. You wanted to make them feel the full force of what they'd unleashed. Each time they pushed you, each time they thought they could break you, they only made you stronger. They were taking you to the edge, and you were no longer scared of what was waiting on the other side. What was waiting was the monster, and it was hungry. And then it happened. There was no dramatic shift, no earth-shattering moment. It was a subtle transformation, like the quiet unraveling of a thread that holds everything together. The anger, the pain, the weight of years spent underestimated and belittled. They all collided, crashing together like a storm. In that instant, you understood something profound. The monster was no longer just a shadow inside you, waiting to be unleashed. It had become you. It had consumed your doubts, your insecurities, and turned them into something far more powerful. The monster wasn't separate from you anymore. It was an integral part of who you were. You became the thing they never saw coming. And with that realization came power. A raw, undeniable surge that ran through your veins, charging your every thought and action. You began to see the world through new eyes, as if the veil had been lifted. You could feel the strength within you growing, pushing outward. You no longer had to seek approval, to beg for validation. You were no longer the fragile being they thought they could manipulate. No. Now you were a force, impossible to ignore, impossible to control. They had created a monster, but they didn't understand that this monster didn't bend to anyone's will. You made your own rules now. The hunger that had once been for survival was now something much darker, something more primal. Revenge no longer satisfied you. It became a thirst that nothing could quench. Watching them fall wasn't enough. You wanted them to feel everything you had felt, the humiliation, the pain, the endless pushing. You wanted them to experience it, to understand, too late, that the monster they had awakened had no intention of stopping. The more they tried to fight it, the more they gave it power. The beast was no longer confined to your mind. It was a storm, tearing through everything in its path. They thought they could control you, dismiss you as insignificant, as something to be walked over. Their arrogance blinded them to the truth. They saw you as nothing more than a stepping stone in their path to power, someone they could manipulate without consequence. They believed they could break you without paying the price. But what they failed to see was that every insult, every moment of disregard, was not a weapon aimed at your weakness. It was fuel for something greater, something they couldn't comprehend. Each push, each betrayal didn't break you. It forged you into something far stronger. They thought they were building their empire on your crushed spirit. Instead, they were feeding the fire that would soon consume them. Then, the shift happened. The world tilted, and the balance of power, once so firmly in their hands, began to slip away. Suddenly, it wasn't you who was trembling, it was them. It wasn't you who was cornered, it was them, caught in the snare of their own making. The power you once lacked, the strength you thought you'd never possess, was now yours. They had pushed you, underestimated you, and now they were at your mercy. But mercy was not on the table. They were trapped, helpless. As the monster they had unleashed took full control, the tables had turned, and they were the ones who could no longer escape. At first, they fought back. They tried to assert control, to remind you of the past, to make you feel small again. But it was too late. The monster had evolved. It was no longer just an abstract force. It was a living, breathing manifestation of your will, your power, your rage. And now, they were faced with an unstoppable force, something they had unknowingly triggered, something they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Their actions, their arrogance had led them to this moment, and now they had no way of escaping the consequences. The monster was no longer a shadow in your mind, it was your truth and their undoing. They thought they could dismiss it, mock it, make it something unreal, a mere figment of your imagination, a passing thought. But the monster they awakened was no illusion. It was real, and it was relentless. No matter how hard they tried to fight, no matter how many ways they tried to escape, the monster inside you surged forward with a hunger that could never be satisfied. It tore through their lives like a storm, swallowing everything in its path, leaving only devastation. They believed they could control you, keep you small, keep you quiet. But now, they were nothing more than prey to the very force they had pushed into existence. The fear in their eyes was unmistakable, and it wasn't just fear of the monster anymore. It was fear of their own choices, the weight of their own arrogance. They realized, far too late, that every slight, every cruel word had consequences. And now, they were trapped in the web of their own making, unable to escape the beast they had birthed. The monster was in control, not just of their lives, but of their fates. They had unleashed a force far beyond their comprehension, and now they had no choice but to watch as it consumed them. There would be no mercy. There would be no forgiveness. The monster wasn't interested in apologies, in reasons, in pleas for understanding. It didn't care about who they once were or who they thought they could be. The monster only cared about one thing: destruction. Every ounce of its power, every shred of its rage, was focused on one singular goal: to devour everything that had ever dared to threaten its existence. The monster's wrath was a force of nature, unstoppable and unforgiving, and they were the ones who had made it this way. It came like a storm, swift and unrelenting. The moment they realized they had no escape, everything they had built, every lie they had spun, every illusion of control they held shattered before their eyes. Their empire, once so solid and unyielding, crumbled beneath the weight of their own arrogance. They thought they could manipulate you, keep you small, but now they were staring at the monster they had awakened, the monster that was their undoing. And there, in that final moment, they realized they had no control, no power left. The monster had come for them, and now they were helpless to stop it. Each step they took to fight back only led them deeper into their own destruction. They couldn't outrun the force they had unleashed. The monster moved with the precision of a predator, striking when they least expected it. It didn't just tear at the edges of their world, it consumed everything they had ever known. Their lies, their deceit, their manipulation, all the things they thought would protect them from the consequences, crumbled beneath the weight of their own actions. The very foundations they built their empire on were shattered by the relentless force they had invited into existence. And still, they fought, grasping at anything they thought might save them. But it was too late. They were trapped in a web of their own making, unable to escape the carnage they had set in motion. The monster wasn't just an external force, it was their own mistakes, their own cruelty, coming to devour them. The end was inevitable. No amount of pleading, No desperate attempt at control could save them now. They were consumed by the very beast they had thought they could tame, their world crumbling around them like dust in the wind. And you stood there, watching as the chaos unfolded, knowing that the monster they had made was now their downfall. The world they had built was nothing but rubble, and in the silence that followed, you were left standing tall while they were reduced to nothing. And finally, what they failed to see was that the monster they awakened didn't just destroy them, it built you. It turned your pain, your anger, and your struggle into something far more powerful. What once felt like weakness has now become your strength. You are the monster now, stronger, more determined, and unstoppable. Nothing can hold you back anymore. This change isn't just about surviving what happened to you. It's about rising above it. The pain and betrayal were never meant to break you. They were the things that pushed you forward. The monster wasn't a threat. It was a tool that helped you grow. What they created in their arrogance has become your greatest asset. Now, it's time to accept that strength. Don't shy away from the power you've earned. If you've ever felt the anger and pain building inside you, don't fear it. Use it. Share this message with anyone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us as we explore the power that lies within you. The world won't be able to ignore you anymore.